Hello and welcome to the Cinementalist podcast for cinementalist.com. My name's Andy. Sitting next to me is Floki, our bearded dragon mascot. And sitting opposite me is Liam. How's it going, my friend?
Yeah, can't complain too much, man. You?
Yeah, all right, thank you.
Good stuff.
We've just done our audio tests for the day. A fun fact about last week's podcast. When I went to edit it on Monday, as I always do, I went to play it back and it was faster than it should have been, which made us sound like Andy and Liam the Chipmunk.
Should we just call ourselves Alvin Mark 1 and 2?
Yeah, it wasn't great. After a lot of tweaking, I figured out that for some reason, and I've yet to be able to identify why, we were 9% faster than we should have been. If you turn the playback dial down to 91%, not 90, 91%, then we sounded correct. And I bet you didn't notice if you listened to last week's podcast that it was
9% faster.
9%. Yeah, I would have made a lot more sense, wouldn't it, if it had been like a round figure. But yeah. 9% I figured out eventually after a lot of tweaking and fiddling. And I've done some test recording this afternoon and everything's turned out fine. And we're just going to roll with it. I mean, I managed to fix it. If it is too fast again, I can fix it. It's just the weirdest fucking thing ever. I mean, I was almost tempted to release it like that because it was kind of hilarious to hear us talk like this about films. But, that's
making all our fans do this extra work tinkering with their speed settings and everything.
Yeah. I actually double checked it on like different devices and things to make sure it didn't play back at a wrong speed as well. Because if you go a little bit under that as well, suddenly we're like every other film podcast on the internet where people talk very gently about film for some time. And that's definitely not us, is it?
I like to think not. Yeah.
Anyways, yes, we're here to talk about films and TV as usual, and I'm going to start out with some news. Would you like some news, Liam?
Please do, yes.
Excellent. Well, actually, it's a bit of a slow news week. It's one of those, I'm afraid. Tom Cruise has been blowing stuff up in Derbyshire.
What, you mean for films or because he's enraged about something occurring on a film set?
Everyone's assuming that it's for a film. He could just have gone wild. He could have feral Tom Cruise.
He is Tom Cruise.
But no, there's been a quarry train crash that has been setting the media alight. For some reason, the media in this country are absolutely in love with Tom Cruise.
Yes, they fucking are.
And it's kind of weird, actually. I was watching the Silverstone Grand Prix the other day because I'm a Formula One fan. And yeah, Tom Cruise was just all over it. They did some weird segment where the presenters of the Formula One stuff were doing an acting segment with him and they're all out on the track and pretending they're in a Hollywood film. And it was just like, get the fuck away from my cars go zoom round track, Tom Cruise.
This is the thing, he is still one of the most bankable actors on the planet. He's still, even though he's going to be 60 next year, he seems to have retained his looks quite decently.
Somewhat, yeah.
And yeah, somewhat, but somewhat's better than nothing, I guess, at least in the eyes of the media. And so, yeah, they are just like, oh my God, it's Tom Cruise. Tom Cruise took a shit on my doorstep. They will,
no, that's a great news story.
They will flock. Tom Cruise passed me in the street and he was under a hood flanked by minders and I got an infinitesimal glimpse of him. Here's 50 grand for that story. They fucking love it.
Yeah, for some reason he does indeed sell papers. But yes, media's been going wild about all the filming he's doing in this country and lots of people posting selfies with him, stuff like that. Essentially what he's done is he's driven a train off a cliff in Stony Middleton. In
where?
Stony Middleton.
Where the hell is that?
Apparently it's in Derbyshire.
Stony Middleton.
Yeah, a lot of filming sort of in the Midlands and up north.
They've got very funny names for places in the Midlands, I've noticed. I don't mean to be southern-centric, but...
no, there's quite a few.
I went to a wedding in Shropshire once in a town called Preston Gubbles. They have very interesting place names around there. So.
Yeah. But there you go. if you want to know where Tom Cruise is, he's in the UK blowing stuff up. And God bless him, I suppose.
I suppose.
A trailer has been shown for The Matrix 4, which is now officially titled The Matrix Resurrections. This was shown... Resurrections, yes.
Not resurrection.
No, resurrections, plural, yeah. This trailer was unveiled at CinemaCon in Las Vegas, only to the critics in the room. They've decided not to release it online yet. So what they've essentially done here is release a trailer where a lot of the journalists that were there now get to go and write articles describing minute by minute what happens in the trailer, whereas the rest of us can't see it yet. So there you go. There's some weird sort of hype machine stuff going
wonderful,
on here. Yeah, fantastic. So we can't really talk about it. As soon as I saw this news story, I'm like, oh, great. trailer for the new Matrix is out. We'll watch that and we'll have a discussion about whether we think it's going to be any good. No one fucking knows.
Earlier, I was having a glance at some articles about upcoming films, that I liked the synopsis of. And it's like, people are so excited about such and such. And you go into the article looking for some articulation of why people are excited. It doesn't give you any. No offering what it's about.
Nope.
No.
I mean, it's a non-event, this really. There are a few other trailers that debuted at CinemaCon as well.
Like non-events.
I don't get the whole thing about giving a preview to critics who are then going to go and who really is interested. I've got a synopsis in front of me here of like a journalist of what he's written about what happens in the trailer, which is essentially in a weird way like trailer spoilers. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm not even going to read it out because who cares really? So you haven't really released the trailer is what I'm getting at here. Is this some weird sort of staged hype building advertising campaign that's happening? People are going to get hyped about the movie if they see the fucking trailer. If you don't release it, all we've got is somebody else's account, and who wants to read that is my entire point here.
Yeah, I can go along with that. It's annoying, basically. It's very annoying.
Yeah, so there you go. When the Matrix trailer is released, we'll discuss it on the podcast. Until then, fuck you, I guess. Yeah.
Thanks for wasting our fucking time.
Fuck all of us. Yeah. They wasted our time. Now we're wasting the listeners' time. It's just a roundabout
and it's their fault.
Waste of time. Found a little film here that looks like it might be up your street. Thought we'd cover it. Witches of Blackwood.
Witches of Blackwood.
Yeah, it's an Australian folk horror, apparently, according to this article that I'm pulling from Gizmodo. As any folk horror fan who revels in the ways of ancient magic, long-forgotten traditions, and strange rituals involving twigs and animal masks can attest. These stories often start the same way, with an outsider entering a community that immediately lets them know how not welcome they are. So begins Australia's Witches of Blackwood, starring Cassandra McGrath, 2005's Wolf Creek, as a woman whose homecoming is far more uneasy than she'd anticipated. The official synopsis: the film follows a young woman, Claire, who, following the death of her mother, returns to her hometown to discover it riddled with witchcraft and overshadowed by a mysterious darkness, steeped in rumours of a soul-stealing entity. As she seeks the truth behind her mother's death, a confrontation with a coven of witches is the only way to survive.
Bloody hell.
So you quite like your folk horror?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of folk horror, especially as like a subgenre of horror, stuff like The Wicker Man, Midsummer, Robin Redbreast. Love all that shit.
The Wicker Man, all that kind of stuff.
And I'm also a big fan of Aussie cinema. Aussie. I like the way Aussies do dark shit. In fact, one of my extra takes is some dark Aussie shit this week. So yeah,
an official genre title.
I'll be dark Aussie. Well, Ozploitation is.
Oh yeah, I have heard that. Yeah, Ozploitation. Yeah, quite like that.
Which essentially translates as messed up film from down under.
Sure. Yeah.
So, no, but that sounds intriguing. I'll have to keep an eye on that one.
Yeah, well, September the 7th, apparently, is the VOD release date for this.
Bubble, fucking tall and trouble, you bastard.
Something like that, yeah. Directed by Kate Whitbread and written by Darren Markey. Also starring John Vos and Nicholas Denton. So, yeah, something for you coming up soon anyway, mate.
Sweet. I shall keep my eyes peeled and may just review it.
My next article here worries me a little bit.
Oh, okay. Do tell.
Because I'm a big fan of John Cleese.
Indeed.
I like John Cleese a lot.
Has he gone mental?
Well, John Cleese has gone a little bit increasingly more mental as the years have gone on, I have to say. It is sort of old man shouts a cloud, as we like to say on this podcast. And yeah, this whole project just worries me a little bit. But John Cleese is taking on cancel culture in a new documentary series. The Channel 4 series, titled John Cleese Cancel Me, will explore the possibility of making comedy without anyone taking offence. In a statement, the Monty Python actor commented, "I'm delighted to have a chance to find out on camera about all the aspects of so-called political correctness. There's so much I really don't understand, like how the impeccable idea of let's all be kind to people has been developed in some cases ad absurdum." Throughout the series, Cleese will interview people who have been on the receiving end of cancel culture, as well as activists who have orchestrated criticism of various public figures. This is all going to go spectacularly wrong, isn't it?
Well, I kind of want to see what he's banging on about.
I've got a feeling he's going to get the tone of it wrong. Do you know what I mean? Because I think there is a very good documentary series or documentary program in this case to be made about cancel culture and how far do we go with it as a society, how much it becomes, what point does it start infringing on free speech? At what point does it start censoring people? And at what point is it at the right point to cut off and say, no, that's no good for society. We're going to shy away from it. We're going to put those people in the corner. Do you know what I mean? That's a very, very delicate subject, and I think it's a debate that all society needs to have. I'm not entirely sure John Cleese is the man to do it because he's said some particularly stupid things in the past few years about this very, very subject.
Here's the thing. I still believe that it's perfectly fine and rational and essentially inoffensive to say that I am opposed to censorship for everyone. For everybody.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like discriminate based on religion because I believe that every single person should have the right to express their opinion, however fucking loony that opinion is. As a principle, if you're operating from that standpoint, as in defense of that principle, okay, but John Cleese himself, when he said things like London isn't really London anymore,
yeah,
you think, mate, why? What are you talking about?
It's sort of the definition of a dog whistle, isn't it?
Well, yeah, because when he says London isn't really London anymore, I mean, we in the UK we started having mass migration influxes. In the late 1940s, many of whom were economic migrants who were coming over here to do shit that lazy British wankers didn't want to. And so for many years now, London has been a place with a multitude of differing ethnicities.
Yes, it's been multicultural for a very long time.
For decades and decades and decades. So when he says...
and to call it out like that, it's like, okay, what is your point exactly? What exactly are you trying to say by that? You're saying you don't see many, white British faces.
Well, yeah, this is the thing.
That's essentially what you're saying, isn't it, without saying that? And yeah, you can call it cancel culture if you like, but that kind of isn't okay.
Yeah, I mean, I'm quite as you know, we're both quite left-leaning people, and the reason that I'm opposed to censorship, one of the many reasons, is because I think that bad ideas should be allowed to be aired so they can be rationally discredited.
Sure.
See, when you forbid an idea, you attract people to it. When you allow people to refute it, more people go, look at that fucking silly, delusional idiot over there. Let's ignore him.
What I'm worried about as well is, look, I'm not saying for 1 second, I actively like John Cleese. I think he's a very interesting man, and I've spent many a happy afternoon. He's done many talks and sort of conferences and TED, not exactly TED Talks, but you know what I mean, sort of an audience with kind of things over the years. He's a very intelligent and eloquent man. All that being said, when he goes for these sort of things, it is a bee in his bonnet, and I get why, because Monty Python was controversial for its time, and they was criticizing religion and the status quo and all those sort of things, and they were in danger of being cancelled for that sort of thing, and sort of publicly refuted for it. That's all well and good. When he talks about it these days, he has a tendency to use some very, very blunt language that I don't think says what he thinks it says. And I'm just kind of worried that it's going to make him look like somebody that I really, really hope he isn't.
Yeah,
I've got a feeling he's a really nice guy. Please don't ruin one of my sort of childhood heroes, if you like.
Without going down the rabbit hole of becoming, making the podcast too intensely political, I've heard a couple of people say like, oh, that quote about London not being London anymore, it was specifically referring to people apologising for extremist elements. It's like, well, he didn't say that.
No,
he didn't.
If you're going to say something like that, you need to qualify and you need to be very, very specific with what you're saying.
He didn't make that qualifier. So you just saying that he did make that qualifier is disingenuous.
If you leave that point open, that's when the racism creeps in.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which is a viable concern. And like yourself, I really hope if he goes ahead with this that it's not going to be a load of that kind
I hope
of
it's a nuanced and balanced discussion, in which case it'll be very, very good indeed. I think that discussion needs to be had, but at the same time, I hope he doesn't go in with the sledgehammer because it's not going to make him look very good, and it's going to be painful for me to watch, but I'll watch it and I'll review it, and we'll find out soon, I suppose.
Must do one's duty, son.
Yeah, that's going to make for an awkward conversation on the podcast, isn't it? My last bit of news this week. Haven't heard much from Christian Bale for a while.
Yeah, now that you mention it.
He has been working, though. This is an article from EmpireOnline.com. Christian Bale has had plenty of success playing real people in what would otherwise appear to be unreal situations, and he's part of a new film that offers just such an opportunity. Bale is attached to star in and produce The Church of Living Dangerously. A new Regency has leapt at the film rights to David Kushner's eponymous Vanity Fair article, which explores the story of John Lee Bishop. After surviving a hard-scrabbled childhood, Bishop rose to become pastor of the Living Hope Church, which at one point was so big that it filled an 8,500 square foot former supermarket in Portland, Oregon. Bishop drew crowds for his showman style of sermons, bringing exotic animals to the pulpit, and was almost mauled by a Bengal tiger. Despite his church's forgiving attitude to lost souls, the congregation was less than magnanimous when he was caught in an affair with a church employee and his addictions to painkillers and booze were unearthed. Bishop's son David developed a meth and heroin habit, and the preacher found a perplexing method of intervention. Determined not to fail his son, Bishop insisted on taking the drugs with the youth to understand their power over him. That led to Bishop smuggling drugs for a Mexican cartel. Caught at the Mexican border after 20 runs, Bishop was convicted and sentenced to 5 years behind bars. Ultimately, it was David who pulled him out of his tailspin. I mean, that plot just sounds absolutely mad.
And is this helmed by Christian Bale?
Christian Bale in the lead and producing, yeah.
That does sound pretty fascinating, though. I would like to see how the Bale attacks that one.
I mean, it's probably just the mention of him being almost mauled by a Bengal tiger at the pulpit, but it does sort of sound Tiger King-esque. In that kind of, so it kind of sounds like it would be a better docuseries than a film, perhaps. But if anyone's going to pull that off, it's going to be Bale, isn't it? He can do that sort of intense, frenzied, and the guy sounds like a fucking maniac.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is a really, that is certainly a left field story.
Yeah.
So, yeah, who better than Bale? Because he does have a knack for that, to put it lightly.
It's Bale or Nick Cage for those roles, really, isn't it? Yeah. You've got two options going Hollywood A-list.
I love Cage. I do love Cage. But Bale, I just don't think that Bale has gone really nutty in a while.
Yes, that's true.
Just to let out that real kind of mania, that intensity that he showed, in stuff like American Psycho most prominently. But, he's still got that. I've liked a lot of his subsequent films since then, but he does have that brilliant quotient of nuttiness there. And I think that kind of thing is just the right cocktail for this sort of movie. So, I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, prick my ears up. And, it's Bale is attached, essentially. So I think we're probably a couple of years off from this. But like we said at the start, it's been a while since we've seen anything Christian Bale. He's a fantastic actor indeed. And he's got a knack for picking really interesting out there roles, much in the same way as Nick Cage, actually. So yeah, very, very excited to see that when it eventually arrives.
Wonder if he's fully slimmed down from Vice yet.
Oh, there's bound to be a bit of body transformation, something or other in there, isn't there?
Yeah. He's nearly killed himself a few times. He just doesn't give a fuck.
No, he really doesn't.
You need that spirit. You need that authenticity of spirit.
Yeah, for sure. Okie dokie then. Well, that's the end of the news this week. Liam, I believe you have a couple of films for us as usual.
Yeah, a couple of new ones. Well, this one, I think this is another one that came out late last year, a couple of festivals, but it debuted on video on demand this very month. This is an Irish comedy horror called The Boys from County Hell. And I heard a couple of people in various film groups that I belong to, they were bandying this title about, and they were just like, if you like horror with a bit of real-world mythology, and it's like, and I thought, and it's a Paddy film as well. Yeah, I'm going to definitely sink my teeth into that one. Appropriate idiom there, because it is also a vampire.
I was going to say, the only thing I know about this is it's supposed to be a vampire movie.
Well, this takes place in 6 Mile Hill, which is a small town in Ireland. And we are introduced to Eugene Moffat, who's a young man played by Jack Rowan. And he lives in 6 Mile Hill with his best friend, William Bogue, played by Fra Fee. That's the actor's actual name.
Okay.
Fra Fee.
Fra Fee.
And it opens in their local, known as the Stoker, which has, the sign outside is a painting of Dracula.
As in Bram.
Yeah, as in Bram.
Okay, yep.
Who was an Irishman and, did spend some time around that area of the nation where 6 Mile Hill is supposed to be situated. I mean, I think pretty sure the town's fictitious. Should have done my research on that one.
No, fair enough.
I should just know automatically.
I actually didn't know he was an Irishman. That's an interesting little fact.
Well, as the film opens with Eugene and William in the Stoker, a pair of Canadian tourists come in. They just order a pint of whatever's local, and the two start sort of lightly ribbing them, making fun of them. He's like, what are you going to tell us not to go out onto the moors at night? It's like, this is Ireland, lad. There are no moors. What are you talking about? But they offer, they say, I'll tell you what, buy us a drink, and we'll take you out. We'll take you out and show you some places that are pertinent to local law, cultural history, etc. So they go, yeah, okay, what the hell? They down their pints, and then they go out vast out into the great big fields that surrounds the area, because it's essentially it's farming community. They go into this great big field, and right in the middle of it is this very menacing looking cairn. It's a cairn that's got to be about, I guess it's got to be about it's between 5 and 6 foot. It's a decent. I mean, that's a pretty big drop off, but it's a decently sized cairn. You won't fucking miss it. And so as they're walking up to it, Eugene and William start telling the two Canadians about the legend of the Abertac. The Abertac is a genuine figure in Irish mythology, and when you read the actual legends, the Irish legends describing Abertac, the most accurate thing you can say about his description is that he is a vampire dwarf wizard.
Okay. New one on me. Yeah.
But that's the description of Abertac in Irish legend. The film retains some of that, but you know, not quite as on point as that. I won't give too much away about that itself. But Abertac is, it's an ancient Irish vampiric legend, and the boys tell the Canadians about how Bram Stoker spent some time in that area of Ireland, and his inspiration for Dracula, as opposed to being Vlad Tepes, was actually this local legend of the Abertac. And they play a prank on the Canadians and scare the shit out of them. Their friend SP jumps out dressed in a garb, and the Irish fellas take the piss out of the naive and easily spooked Canadian couple, when they're just like, oh, you know, that was a good crack. Fuck it, let's go back to the Stoker for a pint, fiddly-diddly-dee, etc. And then bang.
How are the Irish accents, actually, as a
they're
half Irishman yourself?
Well, they're all Irish people.
Okay, so yeah. So pretty good.
All the actors are Irish.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. But, so yeah, they're pretty good. But so then it's revealed that Eugene, he actually works for his dad, Francie, played by Nigel O'Neill, and they're part of a group. They're part of a construction crew, and the people of 6 Mile Hill they've incurred the wrath of all their fellow residents, because they are helping some land development, and this requires just basically clearing loads and loads of the surrounding farm area, including taking William, his best friend, and his family out of their home. I mean, William's planning to go to Australia, but, you know, his parents are devastated about they're going to have to move out of the home that they've raised their son in, where they've lived for years. And it also requires the destruction of the cairn, which allegedly serves as Abertac's lair, his chamber, where he's been imprisoned underground for untold centuries. And the people are like, no, you can't do this. You can't do this. You're ripping apart the local community. You're destroying things that should, just be left as they are. And you're potentially putting us all in a lot of danger, because you can't say what is and what is not under that thing. And they're just, oh yeah, bollocks, shut the fuck up, etc. And so their demolition, essentially, the excavation goes underway. And the cairn is knocked down, and then all of the spooky, weird, scary shit that loads of people have been hammering away at occurring, it starts occurring, as you could likely imagine. And yeah, there is this thing, this vampiric thing.
Not a vampire, a vampiric thing.
Well, yeah, because it is a vampiric thing. This is one sort of way in which the film does pay heed to the mythological origins, is that it's not explicitly a vampire in the sense that, the common imagery that one would pop into one's head when the word vampire is mentioned is not precisely that, but it is vampiric.
Sure.
But it deviates in many ways from the typical behaviours of what most people would be in congruous opinion about what a vampire is. But what it does do, it is similar to vampires. And in a way, the vampiric behaviours that it exhibits are in many ways more fucked up and more skin-crawling than your typical depictions of vampirism in cinema. But it's the boys from County Hell. It's all of this little core group of 6 Mile Hill residents and their quest to defeat the Abertac and the people that the Abertac turns during its rampage. So, this is an interesting one because as I said, it's a comedy horror, and I've mentioned before about being a big fan of comedy horrors. I can reel off loads that I really, really love that combo when it hits the nail on the head. I've always, I love stuff like Fright Night, for example. That's one of my big favourites. Something that actually delivers scares and decent laughs consistently. I'm always a sucker for that kind of thing. With regards to the comedy, most of it does land. It is a really good riff on self-deprecating Irish humour, poking fun at stereotypes, the camaraderie and the chemistry. It is good. It is very enjoyable. Where the film starts running into problems is the marrying of the humour with the horror elements, because the film initially begins to elucidate the monster angle in a promising suspense-building way, and then that begins to slowly peter out a little bit as it goes along, because they make some good decisions, i.e. not showing too much of the creature. But in terms of the arc of the ab attack, it teases and then it sort of withdraws, and it teases and it sort of starts to get that momentum on the narrative treadmill, and then it just sort of starts easing back a bit and going off in other directions that, could have used cutting off at a more succinct time, because they cut back to laughs and mixing in the laughs with the skin-crawly suspense, but they just don't manage to get it in unison as you would have liked. The horror element itself, by the time the creature is actually revealed in full and its intent and its abilities are revealed in full, the film really starts to feel quite laggy, and then the denouement wasn't really that satisfying to me. So it's essentially like you've got two movies in one going on here, which I was quite dismayed about, because I was looking forward to this. And a lot of people had bandied the film about, people asking, what are some good recent horror films that lean into real world mythology? I thought, I love horror films. I like Irish cinema as well, not just because of the bias that people would assume that I have, but because there has been a lot of good Irish cinema.
Sure, yeah, particularly horror actually.
Yeah,
there's been some good Irish horror.
And some great comedy films as well. So Irish comedy horror, I thought you can't go wrong. But it's not that it sucks; it's just that it starts off very strongly, and then once the panic sets in, once the characters are fully aware of what they're dealing with and are trying to nail down a plan of action in combating it, that's where the threads sort of start to come loose. But to give it another few more complimentary barrages, the film does succeed in being quite poignant in a lot of places. Its depiction of Eugene and William's friendship, they're best friends, and things don't go as well as they possibly could for the pair of them without giving away any spoilers. And the way that it tackles that, and the way that it tackles William's family and their trauma about having to move off the land, it is well done. It is decently acted. There's nothing really wrong here with any of the performances. It's just that the script laggy, trying to find its feet tonally in places, because it starts off well doing that, but then again, with the rare rating allocation, I'd probably give The Boys from County Hell a 6 out of 10. It starts off well enough, but then it just gets a little bit sloppier running up to the climax. So, not too bad. Could have been better.
Oh, fair enough.
Lamentably.
Shame.
And then next up, this is one I've been looking forward to for a considerable while. I sat down for The Green Knight. We talked about this before?
I'm actually very glad that I didn't review it this week, because that's different to the one I've got here.
Oh, what were you going to review?
I was thinking about watching it today to review on the premium, and then I picked something else instead. So it's fine. Yeah.
I think we need to get a bit better with our cross-referencing.
So far, it's been happy accidents the whole way across.
Yes, indeed. Yeah. But no, Green Knight.
No, I've been curious about this one.
New movie from David Lowery, obviously inspired, based upon Sir Gawain, and that's a name that is just infested with an whole confusing slew of different pronunciations, very annoying. But I've always said Sir Gawain and the Green Knight.
Okay.
Obviously based upon
go with that
14th century poem by anonymous person who's usually referred to as the Gawain poet or the Pearl poet, whose identity has never been verified. But yeah, in Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, Sir Gawain is the nephew of King Arthur, and he's also the son of Morgan Le Fay, or as some people call her, Morgana Le Fay, the sorceress and one of the key villainesses in Arthurian legend. One Christmas morn, Gawain is at the round table with his uncle Arthur and all the rest of the knights. And they're sitting around, engaging in festivities and conversing, and much merriment and bonding is afoot. And suddenly the doors burst open, and there, on top of a very dauntingly sized green horse, is the titular Green Knight.
Sorry, a green horse?
Yes, a green horse.
So
this is in the legend.
It's not a horse wearing green. It's a literal.
It's a green horse.
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
With a Green Knight. This knight is not only absolutely enormous in terms of physical build, but his skin, every single inch of him, is green, inhumanly green, in a sort of paganistic deity fashion. He looks like something of the forest that has anthropomorphized and just rode into Camelot on this great big fuck-off, weird, spooky green horse. And he carries in one hand a large holly branch, and he silently waits in the doorway until Arthur sort of suspiciously beckons him forward. And he comes before the round table, and he announces to the knights, "None of you would be able to defeat me in fair one-on-one combat, but I propose a Christmas game. I want one of you to approach me, and I will kneel down, and I will allow you to strike your best blow with my axe. And 1 year and 1 day hence, you will visit me, and you will allow me to return that blow."
That's a hell of a Christmas game.
It is a hell of a Christmas game, yeah. Exactly, yeah. Well, Sir Gawain, or Sir Garwin, as people call him in this film. This is annoying. Wish they just knuckle down a fucking pronunciation. But apparently, when they were during production, Sean Harris, who plays King Arthur, he just started saying Garwin, and I think Lowry just let him roll with it.
Okay.
Turn the camera on and let him go.
Cinementalist as an organisation is going for Gawain.
Yeah. Well, I've always said Gawain. My father's always said Gawain, so I'm sticking with fucking Gawain.
Yeah.
But yes, Gawain / Garwin announces his intent to meet the Green Knight's challenge to prove that he is a fearless and noble knight, because Gawain is somebody who seems to be rather insecure in his standing, in his chivalric standing, and he's still quite young, and he wants to prove himself. He wants to prove that he is a walking attestment to the 5 chivalric values, and that he's a good man, an honest man, and a brave man. And so he steps up before the Green Knight, and as promised, the knight kneels down, bends his head. Gawain strikes the blow, decapitates the Green Knight. People start cheering. The Green Knight gets up, walks over to his disembodied head, put it back on his shoulders, and says, 1 year, 1 month hence, and starts laughing and walks out. And even though not explicitly stated, Sir Gawain is a bit like, oh shit.
Sure. I mean, you would be, wouldn't you? Yeah.
So this is the content of the original Arthurian poem. And thus far, this is how it plays, also how it is dramatized on screen in this pretty damn lavish production, courtesy of David Lowry. So after this, Gawain, his reputation sort of starts growing. People around the area begin talking about, he beheaded the Green Knight, Sir Gawain, he's done something amazing. But all the while he is fretting, continuously thinking about the fact that in 1 year he is expected to go to the Green Chapel, which is the Green Knight's lair, far into the wilderness of Great Britain, and repay his debt. And Arthur keeps saying, you have to honour it. You have to. If you don't honour it, you're not a man of your word. And if you're not a man of your word, you're not really worth anything. So the time comes for Gawain to set off on his journey. And along the way, he encounters some very strange and perilous phenomena en route to the fabled Green Chapel. It's fundamentally a character-forming story. It's Gawain, whilst very petrified about what lies for him at the end of this journey, his encounters along the way reveal to him and others exactly what kind of man, what kind of knight he is, what kind of metal he is made of, if any, how consistent and true he is towards the values that he professes to hold. So it's very, very, very chivalric romance stuff. And for the most part, rather faithfully played out in the screen adaptation. Now, during about the first sort of half hour of this film, I was thinking, this is off to an incredibly slow start. I don't know, something seemed a little bit patchy about the narrative momentum. And even though I tried as I might to ignore it, I started getting this horrible feeling in the pit of my stomach that this was going to be a real laborious slog to get through. It's just something really strange. It's doing something weird with the pacing. I don't know what the fuck is going on here. Then I thought to myself, give it a damn chance. This is a really heartfelt and committed adaptation of a 14th century poem. Not that I expected to go whiz bang.
Sure, they're all paced pretty slowly. And
they are, yes. They are, yes. Maybe I've just been, spoiled too rotten by a lot of, single figure brain cells narrative structure in cinema.
You watched F9 and you were ruined ever after.
I know, no, this is, it's totally fucked me, mate. But no, once things kick off, once the gravity of Gawain's situation sets in for him, and he embarks on his quest to locate the Green Chapel and repay his debt to the Green Knight and prove to everyone and himself that he is what he professes to be and that he is a brave and decent and worthy man. I was astonished by it, honestly. Once the credits rolled on this, I haven't been able to stop thinking about it. First of all, the cinematography by Andrew Dros Palermo is phenomenal. It was shot all around County Tipperary in Ireland. And just the way that it utilises all of those locales is absolutely fantastic. This is just the lushness of, it's obviously the matter of Britain. So it's supposed to be taking place somewhere around rural England, but what no better place to shoot it than the Irish countryside. It's completely and utterly, probably the only place really suitable for it, because it really, really does. You're able to just drink in that great mythological taste and, that atmosphere. It just executes this with, I'd say, just beautifully surgical precision. And there's a lot of ellipsis. Some people have been complaining about how, it seems to have a sort of opacity in its thematic execution and that the build-up is quite slow and what the hell was that all about? I actually found this film to be moving. It was a really, really visually lush, and Dev Patel is extremely good in the main role, and you've got great performances from, Sean Harris. I'm always a great fan of when Sean Harris turns up, because most of the time he's very, very creepy, and that is not refrained from here in any sense, but there's also a humanity that seeps through in a very weird and elusive and Weasley way. I say Weasley, I know that sounds very defamatory, but he does have a Weasley sort of face. but that's what. But he's picked for villains.
He's casting Weasley roles.
He's picked for villains because of the way he looks a lot, and he accepts those fucking roles. So it's it's on him really. Yeah. But Joel Egerton, he makes an appearance. An appearance that's actually very vital to the original poem text. And I won't say too much about it here, because the role that Joel Edgerton plays in the film, its narrative importance in the original poem is vaguely hinted at here, but it's not explicitly elucidated as it is in the source material. And what Lowry's done there, his ambiguous approach, I actually think it really helped this movie. It emboldened the mystery, and I think it actually made the ending more powerful. Like what was explicit in The Green Knight, the poem, Lowry has made a lot more elliptical in the film. And I think that was the right decision to make. And yeah, I thought this was actually a very emotionally powerful film. It's gorgeous to look at. I think if you're a fan of the matter of Britain, I do think that you will get a big kick out of it. But also if you are just a fan of gorgeous, slow-burning art, it's very A24. This film is an A24 production, and it does bear a lot of the hallmarks of a lot of those. I'm a big fan of A24, but, somewhat creepy and esoteric operatic music occurring throughout it.
I know
sort of quite unsettling cinematographic techniques. It's got all that in spades, but it just, for me, it really foments an unforgettable experience. And I actually believe that there has been several film adaptations of The Green Knight, and I have watched most of them, including 1984's Sword of the Valiant, in which Green Knight is played by Sean Connery, and I think the film was made in a budget of about £500. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Jesus Christ, what the fuck is
it
that?
It didn't turn up on our Sean Connery premium retrospective.
No, for some strange reason it didn't. No.
Maybe it should have. Yeah.
I think, this poem is a fantastic poem, and it is one of the seminal poems, one of the most important poems, I'd say, in British law. And I think this is the best adaptation of it so far. And I think that the liberties that Lowry has taken, they only empower the narrative intent. They only embolden and strengthen what he was aiming for. They only make it more of a marvel to watch. They only make it more of a unforgettable experience. And I really enjoyed it. I really, really enjoyed it. Doesn't pander to audience expectations. It's powerful. It's moving. It's very intelligent. And hell of a ride. I really, really liked the Green Knight.
I'm really pleased to hear that, man, because it sounds right up my street. And the trailer was very good as well. The
trailer was actually...
The trailer had that cinematic thing you were talking about, that sort of almost tangible, tasteable kind of medieval life kind of thing swirling around it, which always interests me. That's a medieval history nerd.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think that you will tap into the elliptical, the thematic ellipsis, because that is the only fair label to apply to it. But at least I would assume, I would guesstimate that you would probably get the same sort of mental emotional kick as I did from it, because I do think that it's very, very, very well done indeed.
Excellent.
And, I'm always glad when I get a film that I'm not able to stop thinking about for several days. It's always, that's like a big fucking hit. That's a junkie hit for me. And the Green Knight delivered that. I'm very pleased to say. So go and watch it, because it's, if you just love cinema as a craft, this is it. Honestly, it's great.
Good stuff, man. Awesome. Okay, then, TV of the week. Only one thing to talk about this week. It's up on Netflix at the moment. And it originally ran from 2017 to 2018 for 2 seasons. And it's one of those genres that we always love. It's a crime gangster drama.
Yes.
Yes, indeed. And it is called Bad Blood. Aware of this one?
The title rings a bit of a bell. Yeah, I think I've seen it zipping past before.
Yeah, it premiered on City TV, whatever the hell that is, I presume. Well, it's set in Canada, so I presume that's a Canadian TV channel.
It's a Canadian production, isn't it?
It is a Canadian production, very much so, actually. Just about every Canadian actor I've ever seen turns up in this at some point or another. There doesn't seem to be that many of them.
Donald Sutherland?
Well, no, he was actually notable by his absence. It was old Donald Sutherland. But yes, it's called Bad Blood, and it is currently available on Netflix in the UK, I believe in the US as well. And yeah, but again, some plots set up, hadn't they? This opens with a bit of a montage sequence, very much in the vein of Goodfellas, replete with Henry Hill-style voiceover. Except it's not Henry Hill talking, it's Declan Gardner, played by Kim Coates.
Oh, yeah, I know Kim Coates.
Yeah, been around for a while as Kim Coates.
Oh, wait a minute. Yeah, I know of this show.
Yeah, he's very much, in the promo images, he's very much front and center.
Yeah.
As I shall get onto. But we first find him as the, essentially the underboss of the Rizzuto crime family. And this is all based off of a book which is based off of real life circumstances. The Rizzuto crime family were a real thing. And there's a bit of a disclaimer at the start as well, I should have mentioned, that essentially says that this is somewhat based on real events. And I'll get into later how much of a somewhat that might be. But anyway, yes, he is the underboss of the Rizzuto crime family. And his boss is Vito Rizzuto, played by Anthony LaPaglia. Funnily
you
enough.
love Anthony LaPaglia, don't you?
He came up on our premium podcast the other week because I was reviewing The Client.
Barry the Blade.
Where he plays Barry the Blade, and it's absolutely god-awful. But yes, this time around he's playing Vito Rizzuto, who is a very classic Asian gangster archetype. You know what I mean? He's got the slick-back silver fox hair. He's got a huge gut on him, a big cigar, wanders around being the crime boss.
Things are like they were in the old days.
Yeah. Well, he's the crime boss of the Rizzuto family, and they run Montreal. Most of this show is set in the Montreal sort of area. And Declan Gardner explains through his Henry Hill-style voiceover that essentially the city is divided up into various gangs. You have the Mafia, who oversee most of the criminal activity in the town. You have the Irish, you have the bikers, and you have the Haitians as the primary types. And what they're doing essentially is running huge amounts of drugs through the city because it is a port city, Montreal. And thereby they can get the product delivered in and then ship it out. And there's a whole chain of command where it gets brought in by the mafia, gets distributed by the bikers, the Haitians deliver it on a street level, and everybody's got this system set up of drug trafficking. Well, we first find Vito calling all of the bosses of these various crime families to what is essentially a sit down, although they do it standing up for some reason, where he says, look, essentially there's enough of the pie to go around for everybody. We're constantly infighting with each other. I, as the head of the mafia for this town, I'm going to make sure that from this point onwards, because I've got the police in my pocket, because I've got the politicians and the government in my pocket, I'm going to oversee the operations. You guys are all going to take your respective roles within the chain. We're not going to fight amongst each other, and we're going to make a huge amount of money. Just essentially let me sit at the top and handle all the high-level stuff, and everybody's going to have a fantastic payday. And this scheme, believe it or not, works very, very well. And for the next 10 years, and this is the point where the show jumps forward, it's essentially peace on earth, as the show makes it out to be. The drugs are flowing nicely, junkies are falling over, overdosing in alleyways, but who cares because everyone's making lots and lots of money. Life is good when you're a gangster. So we've cut to 10 years later, and we're seeing Vito at his son's birthday party. Now, his son is played by Brett Donahue. He's Nico Jr., and he's in his sort of early 20s, and he works in the real estate market, although obviously being the son of the biggest crime boss in the area, he has a secondary life.
So his name's Nico Jr.?
Yes.
But his dad's name is Vito?
Yes, because his grandfather is Niccolo Rizzuto, played by Paul Sorvino.
Oh, wow, okay.
Yeah, I was getting to that, but let's do that bit now, shall we? Yeah, so Paul Sorvino is Niccolo, his grandfather. His son's there, Nico Jr., played by Brett Donahue, and it's a big birthday party. And we see Vito go out onto the front step of his very elaborate house to have a cigar. And he realizes that there are not only cops watching him, as usual, there's a car parked at the front, but he's used to that as a mafia boss, but another car pulling up with a couple of people that are very obviously there to crash his party with machine guns. And he's there staring these people down. The cops, thankfully, manage to scare these guys away, but Vito starts to realize that, hey, maybe he's been in the game a bit too long. Maybe it's time to start legitimizing his business interests. So he tasks everyone underneath him, including Declan, to start moving the family's interest towards legitimate business in a hope that he can build some kind of legitimate empire for his son to take over when he eventually shuffles off this mortal coil. Unfortunately, his plans are ruined by the intervention of the police, the American police, funnily enough, who turn up and arrest him for a murder that he was involved in many, many years previously. They extradite him back to the US, they sentence him, and they put him in prison for 10 years. So Vito has now been put away for some time, and he's struggling with prison life, going from being the gangster boss to being just a schmuck in an orange jumpsuit in a US jail. Meanwhile, back at home, Declan, as underboss, has now become the acting boss of the Rizzuto family, which would all be well and good as he's very, very effective in that role. However, Nico Jr., the young son, very much has other ideas. He's young, he's impetuous, and he's very, very bloody-minded. Anybody slights him, he sends people after them, and he's beginning to destroy this peace that his father has created. Vito, however, on his monthly meetings with Declan in a prison cell, is instructing Declan to look after my son at all costs. So Declan's left in this babysitter role where not only is he looking after a mafia empire that spans a whole city and is distributing drugs countrywide, but he's also trying to stop the boss's, quite frankly, psychopathic son from ruining the hard-won peace that they fought so hard to ensure. All in the up and up with that?
Yeah, so Nico isn't like some Jackie Jr. type knobhead. He is actually a really dangerous, nasty piece.
No, Jackie Jr. actually would be a fair comparison, actually.
So he's a complete penis, basically.
Yes, he's something of a penis.
Yeah.
However,
okay.
being the boss's son puts him in a position where no one's able to tell him that he's a penis, other than Declan, who confronts him a lot, and this causes a huge amount of strife within the family. The first season of this, by the way, is only 6 episodes long. So essentially what I've told you here is pretty much all of the first episode and a little bit of the second. Lots more happens past this point, which obviously I'm not going to go into because we'd be going too deep into the series. And that's sort of where I'll start, actually. The first 3 episodes of this I thought were fucking rubbish. Really fucking rubbish. I mean, up and down and all over the place. There was something so perfunctory about the thing. It's very slick, it's very stylish, but it was doing all these sort of, it's what used to be called MTV style editing. But I think a more appropriate comparison these days would be like CSI style editing. You know, where sort of the camera moves around a bit too much and it cuts too quickly and there's a little scene of exposition then it just cuts away to something else. And it plays with like the frame timings on certain scenes, so people sort of seem to jump into frame and jump out of, and it's trying to be very, very slick with it, but it just looks really cheap and nasty and horrible. The first 3 episodes for definite were giving me that absolute vibe, and it was actually giving me something of a headache as well. Also, I mean, this is really interesting. The audio mixing was really bad as well, and this isn't helped by the fact that Anthony Paglia's performance as Vito, he plays it very low and in his throat like this. I'd put a bit of East London in there. Obviously, he's got the Italian gangster kind of thing going on. But it's that kind of low rumble. And I couldn't hear what he was fucking saying for most of it. That put into in conjunction with the really over-the-top CSI snappy editing. We've got 2 minutes of exposition here, and then we're going to jump halfway across the country. Just made it utterly bizarre to watch. The only person pulling me through it, actually, was Kim Coates.
Kim Coates is good, man.
As Declan Gardner. He was the only person giving a believable performance. And to say it's a believable performance is correct. The lines of dialogue and the things that he ends up doing as a character are not believable in the slightest. He's essentially the John Wick of mafia hitmen enforcers. I mean, you just give this guy a pistol, he can fuck anybody up. You know what I mean? But Kim Coates is giving some sort of menace to it, some real deep, raspy, powerful menace that sort of was pulling me through it. I have to say as well, Paul Sorvino isn't very good in this show.
No?
No. And again, it's not helped by the fact that the lines he's given are horrible. He's one of those old school Italian granddads that used to be big in the mob. Now he's stepped back to let his son and his grandson run things. And he doesn't want everybody to fight. And occasionally he starts rattling off things in Italian. And his delivery is not good, mate. I mean, it was quite, for the guy that played Paulie in Goodfellas, I mean, it was a little bit painful to watch, to be quite honest. And so I'm watching this and thinking, oh man, this is really plastic gangster. There's an episode title that's something like Home is Where the Gun Is, which should sort of sum up the level of writing. And I was watching it thinking, oh no, because this looked like it had all the potential to be a really stylish mafia thriller. And I absolutely who doesn't love a stylish mafia thriller? And then something funny happened. Round about halfway through episode 4 of the 6-episode first season, suddenly it started to drop all of the things that were annoying me. Suddenly, it started to let scenes of exposition run for more than 2 minutes. Suddenly, it started to let its dialogue breathe. Suddenly, it stopped the CSI-style, MTV-style, super snappy, really distracting editing. All of a sudden, the show calmed down and it boiled down to a point. And the end of season 1, episodes 5 and 6, there are quite a few twists. The show has a big turnaround, which obviously I'm not going to go into. But all of a sudden, out of nowhere, I was suddenly enjoying it. I was going, what the fuck has happened here? This is one of those shows that started off being really shit and suddenly it's done a backflip. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't suddenly turn amazing or anything like that. But all of a sudden I was into it. All of a sudden I was invested. And I was led there, thankfully, by the performance of Kim Coates. And he becomes a much, much more central figure. In season 2, he is the primary figure, the most central figure in the show. And that was a great thing to hang your hat on. I mean, the show's actually done really, really well there. Season 2 and the end of season 1, like I said, I'm not going to say that they're amazing. But because it's calmed down in all the right ways, because it's dropped so many of the things that were shit about it, and it's actually, I don't know what happened, whether they got better writers or whether they actually got some new directors on that really knew what they were doing with it, or whether they had a big meeting and everyone went, look, can we all agree that what we're doing at the moment is a bit shit and we should level it up a little bit? And maybe the actors should try harder, and maybe the dialogue should be written better. And maybe even the actors started looking at the dialogue and going, you know what, I'm not going to deliver the line like that. I'm going to do it like this. Something happened to this show, essentially, is what I'm saying. I don't know what it is, but it went from being really laughable to being slightly laughable, but actually quite endearing, and I wanted to see more of it. It does a little bit of a turnaround. It does a little bit of a transformation. So that makes it really hard for me to recommend on a podcast. Because what I'm essentially saying, and it's the truth, is that if you want to get to the bit where it gets good, you're going to have to watch 3.5 hours of a really bad, crappily done gangster series. But if you do that and follow Kim Coates through and let his acting ability pull you through the bad bits. Even when he's doing the over-the-top stuff, at least he's good at doing the over-the-top stuff. It doesn't become an amazing gangster show, but it becomes a fun one. And it becomes a watchable one. And yes, it's still very silly. And the violence is very unbelievable. And like I said, Declan Gardner is essentially the John Wick of the mafia world. And in season 2, he goes all lone wolf, which does essentially mean he is Captain Badass of Mafia Town. But if you sort of want to get there and see where he goes with that, I would say it's worth the ride. Just don't say I didn't warn you, because you're going to watch the first 3 episodes and you're going to go, this is shit. And I'm with you. But there's a good show waiting after it, is what I'm saying.
Is any of like the sort of mafiosi political intrigue, the cloak and daggery stuff, is any of that actually well written? Is any of it smartly written?
Bits of it, yeah. And so it goes up and down, really. And some parts of it I thought were quite well written. And there's a line that comes in occasionally that just had me laughing when I really, really shouldn't be laughing at it. And yeah, it's managed to get some bad performances out of good actors at points as well, which is just... So it really shows they didn't know what they were doing with it. But I sort of got through that by laughing at it and waiting for Kim Coates to show up. And I'm kind of glad I did, because I'm halfway through season 2 now. And yes, it's still kind of ridiculous, but it's enjoyably ridiculous now. And the menace has been... And the exposition is now allowed to breathe. That's the biggest problem with the first 3 episodes. It's so desperate to be snappy and stylish and cool that it's not letting the exposition breathe, and therefore everything feels perfunctory. Once it stops doing that, the show actually becomes really, really good. So take that as you will, I suppose.
I'm kind of interested just to see what you mean about the transformative moments.
Yeah, it's rare when a show does that, and it did it for me. I'd say it hasn't transformed into a really amazing show, but I do quite like it now.
Because I mean, I've always liked Kim Coates. I mean, I'm sad to hear that Paul Sorvino isn't very good in it, but I've always
but at that point in the show, no one's very good in it either. Paul Sorvino, it sounds like a bit of a spoiler, but he's not in it for particularly long, okay? But yeah, at that point, it just seems like the directors weren't able to get anything good out of the actors. It just seems like they didn't know what they were doing directorially.
Are we also talking about like lazy and distasteful Gumbar stereotyping?
Oh yeah. Everyone's a cardboard cutout at that point. But again, that
doing New York accents even though they're Canadian.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. But once it stops doing that, yeah, there's a decent enough show underneath there. So yeah, at your own risk.
it's kind of that sounds interesting. Maybe I'll go for that.
Okay then, well, trivia to finish out this week. We've never done trivia about Canada before.
No, we haven't.
I like Canada very much. I've been to Canada, and it was...
How many times have you been?
Just the once, but it was a lovely country. Really, really enjoyed Canada. But I thought we'd finish out with some facts about Canada. How about that?
Why not?
Yeah, why not indeed? Every year, millions of children send letters to Santa Claus. Have you ever wondered where they go? They're all sent to a Canadian address, the North Pole's postal address, HOHOHO. In 2008, Santa also received Canadian citizenship issued by the immigration minister. There you go, Santa Claus is Canadian.
So on his documentation, where did it say his place of origin was from?
I don't know. I will get the documents for you next week.
I want to see where they say, where they say he's from.
Yeah.
Because if they say he's from Lapland, then they're officially stating that Santa Claus is Finnish.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I could have dual citizenship or something. I don't know. I'd like to see what his age is.
He's a Canadian Finn, Santa.
Yeah. One of the least surprising facts about Canada is that it can get pretty cold in the winter. The average low for the month of January in Ottawa is minus 14.4. That's pretty cold. However, a temperature recorded in 1947 in Snag, Yukon, makes the rest of Canada's winter weather seem like a relaxing beach vacation. A temperature of minus 63 was recorded in the small village of Snag on February the 3rd, 1947. That's roughly the same temperature as the surface of Mars.
Fucking hell.
Minus 63. When I was there, I went to Banff on a skiing holiday. And at one point, it was minus 40 with wind chill. And that's amazing. I mean, if you've never experienced cold like that, it's like the air has frozen solid. It is a cold like you wouldn't believe cold could get. If you think you've been cold and you haven't been in minus 40, I mean, oh my fucking God. It was just insane. Absolutely
Didn't you say, like, as soon as you, like, sort of stepped off the plane onto Canadian soil, you felt your nostrils freeze?
Yeah, that's the first sensation, is the inside of your nostrils freeze, but instantly, like a kind of thing. You can feel the inside of your nostrils just sort of crack. It's bizarre.
Jesus Christ.
If you walked and never stopped, not to eat, not to rest your feet, not to get some sleep, it would take you 4.5 years to walk the length of Canada's coasts. While the country might not conjure up images of blue waters and white sandy beaches, Canada has the world's longest coastline, bordered on 3 sides by 3 different oceans: the Atlantic, the Arctic, and the Pacific. To put that fun fact about Canada into perspective, that accounts for 202,080 of the world's total 356,000 kilometers of oceanfront property. The only other country that even comes close is Indonesia, which has 54,716 kilometers of coastline.
Holy shit.
That's a fun little bit of trivia, that.
It would take you 4.5 years.
Yeah, providing you never, ever stop. So 24 hours a day you walked, it would take you 4.5 years just to walk the coastlines. It's huge, huge country. For decades, the Hudson Bay region was an unsolved mystery to scientists. The area has lower levels of gravity compared to the rest of the globe.
Really?
Yeah, now I looked this up because I thought that sounds like a bullshit fact. This is true, actually. Scientific papers have been written about this. And the going theory is that the rock underneath the Hudson Bay area has essentially been displaced over time and moved outwards. So in that specific patch, the essentially mass equals gravity. And there is less mass in that area in terms of the rock underneath your feet than there is elsewhere on the globe. And as a result, it has slightly less gravity than just about anywhere else on Earth.
Holy shit, man.
By like a small percentage. But yeah, it's the only place on Earth where you'll experience that low level of gravity.
So is it nothing that's sort of noticeable in terms of...
No, it's only measurable on instruments. But yeah, it's just a bizarre fact. The lowest gravity place on Earth.
That's a cool one, though.
You'd think gravity would be uniform throughout, wouldn't you? But yeah, it's a measurable thing in Hudson Bay.
Nutsy.
Canada is the first country in the world to create a landing pad specifically for UFOs. It's located in St. Paul, Alberta, and was opened in 1967. Even Canada's Minister of National Defence at the time, Paul Hellyer, was there for the unveiling. The platform weighs just over 130 tons, and the concrete structure actually contains a time capsule to be opened in 2067.
That reminds me, there's that line in Tusk where a Canadian customs guard goes, he's like, thing people don't understand about us Canadians is we're not friendly, we're just optimistic.
Yeah, that is ultimate optimism.
Yeah.
Look, there are UFOs, we better get ready for them, I suppose. Actually, this ties very nicely in with my last fact here. Canadians are known for their politeness, but they say sorry so much that an Apology Act was passed in 2009, which made apologies inadmissible in court. So an apology means an expression of sympathy or regret, and not an admission of fault or liability in connection with the matter to which the words or actions relate. That's interesting. So sorry or an apology actually has a different legal meaning in Canada. You can say sorry without it's indicting yourself in some way, without incriminating yourself. Saying sorry doesn't mean you did it, because in Canada, saying sorry is just that common. You say sorry for things you didn't do.
Fucking hell, man.
Similar thing in Britain, actually, funnily enough.
We
someone bumps into you, you say sorry.
You both say sorry.
You bumped into me, you bastard.
Yeah.
You should apologise to me.
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Something we share between each other, British and Canadians.
I mean, that kind of legislation sounds like something out of a satirical novel, or like a fucking picaresque novel.
No, you can look it up. The Apology Act passed in 2009.
Sorry, carnivalesque, not picaresque. Damn me, not even getting the literary terminology right, you twat.
Well, on that note, it's time to end this week's free podcast. Thank you so much for listening. We're going to go and record the premium content now. Liam, I believe you've got an extra take to kick us off with.
Yeah, I do indeed. I've got a mad Aussie horror thriller from 2007 to give a bit of a shout out to, called Storm Warning.
Lovely.
And then I think we're going to sort of
apropos of nothing
first.
Yeah, apropos of nothing, we were having a discussion earlier about what should we do this week on the premium, and Liam mentioned that we've never done our favourite comedies.
I never remember doing comedies.
No, we haven't done our
certainly
favourite
hope
comedies.
We never have.
So we're going to go from a horrible Australian horror film into our favourite, light-hearted comedies.
Well, nothing could be more appropriate. And I mean, you know me, you guys all know me. My extra takes are usually fucking horrible, or they're at least just not very humorous. So to hell with it. We thought we'd change the pace because we do actually like some stuff that is rooted in mirth.
We're going to get all jovial. Yeah.
Yeah. Very strange.
If you feel like listening to our premium content, please do check it out. Check out cinementalist.com for a link to our Patreon page. You can follow us on Twitter at Cinementalcast, and you can follow Liam
at the movies at Wacko Jacko's Flicks.
Yeah, and that's just about it. So yeah, hope to see you on the premium stuff. If not, free one next week. Liam, anything to add?
Thank you very much, everybody. Keep watching good stuff out there. Hope you're all tickety-boo. Thank you for listening.
Hey, awesome. All right, guys. Cheers very much. Hope to see you on the next one.